All my days, I've been held in.
Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. 17 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock. And joining us this morning in studio is Dr. Phaedra Pierre, the chair of the Holy Trinity Cathedral's 200th Anniversary Committee, and the Very Reverend Dean, Dr. Shelly Ann Tenia, Dean and Rector of the Holy Trinity Cathedral. Good morning to both of you and welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Very exciting conversation. I mean, we've all been following what's been going on with the Holy Trinity Cathedral over decades, to say the least, but now we have the 200th anniversary and we have a beautiful coffee table book. So exciting. So congratulations to all of you. Before we get a little bit into the details of the book, let's speak a little bit about the history behind the Holy Trinity Cathedral. Dean Shelly Ann.
So the cathedral was originally actually Holy Trinity Church, because we were not yet a diocese when the English landed in Trinidad and took over Trinidad and decided that the English church should be the church that's there. So that actually the church began, the first building was erected around 1801 and serviced the plantocracy and the English that were there. And that Holy Trinity Church was a church for that time and consecrated in 1823 before the church, the Trinidad became a diocese. Okay. Right, and so we remained a church until 1874, yes, 1874, when the diocese, when Trinidad became its own diocese. Before that, we were being administered by the Diocese of Barbados. So we started off as a church, then became the cathedral, because up to that point, we were really the only Anglican church on the island. Up until the middle 1800s, we were the only Anglican church actually on the island, and then some other churches got built thereafter. We became a diocese in 1874, which made us a cathedral, because to be a diocese, one has to have a cathedral, because the bishop who is named must be seated somewhere, and cathedrals take their name from the seat of the bishop. The seat of the bishop's authority is a cathedra. And so from that name, a cathedral is named. And so there must be a cathedral so that there can be a cathedra, so that there can be a bishop to sit in it.
This is some fascinating history. This is why we need to get the book Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for that, Dean. All right, Doctor, let's bring you into the conversation. Good morning again and welcome. Can you walk us through the publishing of this book, the work that went into it?
Oh, a lot of work went into it. And our 200th anniversary was really in 2023, 200 years after the consecration. But it's taken that long to get the book out. We felt that it was important for documentation to make sure that it came out. So even though it has taken a while, and there was a time when we said, this is so much work, and it's after the anniversary. But we said no. We thought that it was very important that the book come out, that we highlight all of the ministry that the cathedral has been doing over the last 200 years. And we have a lot of input from people, particularly about, let's say, the last 50 years of the work at the cathedral, the ministry, the outreach, our schools, all of that is in the book.
Okay, now, one of the things, of course, Dean would have shared with us would have been some of the incredible history behind it, which I know, of course, is going to be encapsulated in the book in some form or fashion. What else can readers expect from this?
Well, the book is divided into the theme that we had for the celebration. So we came off of Holy Trinity Cathedral, HTC, and we developed our theme around that. So it's called Historical Voice, Theological Choice, Culturally Rejoice. So it's three main sections. One that has a lot of the history, as the Dean talked about. We had contributions there from Dr. Rita Pemberton, who is a historian from the National Trust, and other historical kinds of things. And then there is a section on theology. There are certain parts of the church and practices of the church that are specific to a cathedral. So we have a section on that. And then we have the Culturally Rejoice, which really talks about life. So outreach ministries, the groups that we have at the church and that kind of stuff. We also have three special sections. One called Glimpses. So one of the activities that we had for the celebrations was that every 25th of the month, the church was consecrated on May the 25th in 1823. So every 25th of the month, we released 5-minute videos of people just talking about their experiences at the cathedral. So we've transcribed those and put them into the book. We also had an art exhibition that was about the cathedral, and those pictures are in there, and we have greetings from all of the parishes in Trinidad.
I mean, it's incredible because clearly the committee had a lot of work to do, siphoning through so much information.
Yes.
But one of the beautiful things about it, I think that you would have mentioned, Doctor, is that it's in different parts. So one of those you would have mentioned was a theological part as well, which is quite interesting when it comes to, of course, the lay people, those who go to church every single day, giving them a different bit of insight. So now, Dean, if we can come back to you in the conversation this morning. How important would you say this book is going to be to a churchgoer's life, a parishioner's life? Do you think this is something that may actually help to form them in faith a little bit more?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so our understanding of faith formation is a kind of holistic thing. So yes, the scriptures help inform our faith, but our reason as well. We have brains, we're supposed to think, we're supposed to integrate and understand our life together. And then there's tradition, and tradition is not just what we do every day, but tradition is what we've inherited. And so this book, I think, encapsulates all of those things and will indeed help with the faith formation of Anglicans, and not just Anglicans. I think people of faith in general, because of what the cathedral represents. The architecture alone is a theological conversation, because you step into the building and the grandeur makes you look upward to God. That's the first thing. We could just sit and talk about the architecture alone and how theologically the architecture draws you into God. Plus the other elements, the positioning of the baptismal font, the high altar, the Lady Chapel, what we now call the All Souls altar, and an interesting theological conversation about slavery, freedom, and community building. Because what we now call our All Souls altar was in fact the slave altar. And so you have this juxtaposition between Woodford, who was this great philanthropist, generous man, but who was not interested in the manumission of slaves. So created this space where slaves could receive communion, but also exercise their duties as caretakers of children who came with the planters. And they're both in the same building, perpendicular to each other. And so we have to talk about, what does that mean? That we had slaves and the oppressor and the oppressed in the same building, and the position of God in that, and how we live that out in terms of restoration and reparative things, etc. And that's all of our history. We cannot pretend like one or the other isn't important. They both matter.
Yeah.
So there's so many elements. Our pulpit carries in it all of the images that we see in the Gospels representing each Gospel. So there's so many, the Reredas, that carries a whole list of saints. So there are lots of theological things that are just built into the architecture that have no labels.
Yeah.
But once you see them and you begin to think about them, and your lived experience will begin to help you think about all of the aspects of what it means to be fully human, and what it means to live in a society with others, and what the common good means, what it means to love your neighbor, who is your neighbor, and what it means to be a person of faith in the context of what is now a very plural society,
Beautifully said. Having mesmerized there for a second, especially when you speak about the humanity aspect. It's something we need to consider and a lot to unpack. But I know that we don't have that much time.
We don't.
Hopefully you can come back again to chat a little bit more on that. Let's speak about where we can get the book, Doctor.
Okay, so the book right now is available from all of our committee members, and we have committee members throughout Trinidad and Tobago, because when the bishop commissioned the committee, it came from the entire diocese. So there are committee members north, south, east, and west. You can call me at 620-4717, 620-4717, to find out who's the closest person to you. But we also have books at Metropolitan Book Suppliers, at paper-based bookstores, and soon to be in RIK booksellers.
And the cathedral office,
Of
people
course.
are always in Port of Spain. You can come to the cathedral office. There are books there. And if you don't have cash and you need to pay with links, we accept links as well. So we try to make it as easy to get the book as possible.
Excellent. And that's very important as well, especially when you're coming for a book like this, something that is not just speaking to the history of the church, but the history of a nation.
Correct.
As well, and
Correct.
a people. Absolutely amazing. Now, one of the things that you would have touched on, Dean, would have been the intricacies of the church itself. It is. I mean, once you walk in there, it's absolutely mind-blowing. But one of the things we also know has been at the forefront of society is the restoration of the church. How is that going? How are funds going for that?
That is an ongoing process, and I think a journey in faith and prayer. And so the actual work has not yet started. We have gotten a little closer, and so we began conversation about the putting up of the hoarding, so that it could be deemed a construction site, so that it could be handed over to the contractors and Udicott, who is the project manager. So we're trusting and hoping that that process will move itself along, and the structural work to be done will begin soon. Thereafter, and that's about $20 million worth of work, and what that means is the replacing of the entire roof, because it must be replaced. Termite damage, water damage. It really does need, it is really unsafe at the moment, that roof. And then because of the earthquakes we've been having, the eastern wall has come away from the building, so that needs to be stitched up, and we have some other structural cracks that need attention. So that's going to be the most immediate work. Once that is finished, that's about 18 months of work to be done, then we will continue. So that really the work will be kind of happening in an ongoing way, starting with the structural work, so that the fundraising will need to be happening alongside that, essentially. And so we're really going to try to keep people abreast. So if people come into the building now, it's empty. The big things are boxed up. The things that could not be taken out have been boxed up. Essentially, we've taken out the William Morris stained glass windows. We've taken out the organ. So it's really a shell of itself at the moment, because we await the start of the structural works.
We're looking forward to those structural works and seeing it
Absolutely.
fully restored. Before we wrap our conversation, can you kindly remind us, Dr. Pierre, where we can contact you or your team to purchase?
So, as I said, my number is 620-4717. If you call me, I could give you whoever's your closest contact. The Cathedral office on Abercrombie Street, 623-7271. There are books available there as well. Paper-based bookstores, metropolitan bookstores, and soon to be in RIK.
Wonderful. And what's the contribution for the book?
$400.
Well, Dr. Pierre and Dean Shelly Ann, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Congratulations to you and your team for this wonderful book, and hoping we can have you on soon to have a bit more of a further discussion.
That would be lovely. Thank you, Natasha.
It's our pleasure. Don't want to miss what's coming up on the Now Morning Show. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this.
With all my life, you have been faithful. And